Hello, I'm David, and welcome to this session at Capacity Asia 2021, our keynote session. This session you are now watching is Keynote Panel, the Evolving Connectivity Landscape of Asia. Before we begin, I would like to say a quick thank you to all of our sponsors for making this event possible. Please do take time to visit them at their meeting area, especially our platinum sponsors, China Telecom, China Mobile International, China Unicom and PLDT, and also our gold sponsors, Telstra and PCCW. I'm sure they'll be very much thankful for your time during the course of the event. Throughout the session, please feel free to ask any questions using the chat function. These questions will be addressed during the course of this debate, so I very much encourage you to do so and take part in that conversation. We are joined by a great group of speakers for this session, Keynote Panel, the Evolving Connectivity Landscape of Asia. So here are all of our speakers here, and this will be chaired by our esteemed moderator for this debate, Sam Evans. So without further ado, I'll just leave it to you, Sam, to kick us off for this keynote panel. Been very exciting.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David, and good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking to you today and to be joined by four very, very senior and influential colleagues from the international carrier industry. I saw it was the Ballon d'Or ceremony last night, and they had one for the who's who of wholesale and international carriers of Asia. I think we would have four of the leading nominees in that award here. It's great to be joined by Paul Abfalter from Telstra, Praveen Agarwal from Airtel Business, Victor Aliwalas from PLDT, and Stephen Pang from PCCW Global. And over the course of the next 45 minutes, we're going to be talking about, as David said, the evolving connectivity landscape in Asia. And wow, isn't there a lot happening across the sector? I mean, we're going to talk about infrastructure, we're going to talk about investment, we're going to talk about services, we're going to talk about product, we're going to talk about the impact of the pandemic. So let's dive straight in. Paul, I'm going to come to you first. Looking back over the past 12 months, what would you say have been the fundamental trends within the Asia connectivity market? And if we were to go back 12 months ago, could you have predicted them?
Definitely not have predicted them. I think in terms of what we had in terms of capacity forecasts, in terms of where the investment was going to happen, in terms of how product evolution was going to evolve, it's definitely taken a very different turn than what we'd predicted. I think on the infrastructure side, you know, the industry was still investing very heavily in Hong Kong, for instance. Obviously, that's still happening to a certain extent, but much greater investment on the infrastructure side into, you know, new connectivity hubs such as Philippines, such as Korea, such as Australia and Taiwan. Much bigger investment. A whole range of reasons for that. Some of that's just COVID demand. Some of it's capacity issues in places like Singapore. Some of it's, you know, a little bit on the regulation and geopolitical side, and some of it's environmental factors, but a whole range of issues driving different infrastructure investment. I'd also say that on the technology side, you know, we thought SD-WAN would eventually get there. That's now finally starting to mature. Some of the bugginess that we saw a few years ago in some of the platforms has been ironed out. So, you know, SD-WAN really on an exponential curve now. Obviously, things like unified comms with COVID-19. I mean, who would have thought we'd be doing this call over Zoom a couple of years ago, and the maturity of the product sets in Microsoft, obviously with Teams and what have you. Nobody would have predicted that. And obviously, it's been a tough year this year with other technology issues on the downside, such as the semiconductor issue. Now, that's in fact affecting all of us. We're all in the queue with the with our suppliers, particularly on the card side, and you know, it's been super challenging. And then just in terms of the way products evolved and some of that, just the, you know, the acceleration of the use of the internet, acceleration of cloud, and the last one for us is probably just cybersecurity. I mean, that's just gone completely berserk for us the last 18 months. We can't hire people quick enough to fulfill the customer demands we've got on the cybersecurity side. We've got a massive team globally now on cyber, and a couple of SOCs, and that's a part of our business that's probably growing the quickest. A lot of that's driven by work from home, massive increase in cybersecurity vulnerabilities. whole lot of stuff there. It's probably enough for me, Sam, to lead off.
Wow, yeah, it's a pretty busy 12 months then. Praveen, I can see you're smiling there. Have you seen a similar proliferation of trends across those different axes?
Yeah, and Sam, good afternoon first. So I agree with the Paul. I think this has been a pretty busy 12 months, or I would say last 18 to 24 months. So from India perspective, in any case, the investment is going high, very high into the connectivity part. It's a combination of the things. It's a connectivity, which is basically the fiber network, both on the international side as well as on the domestic side. Also, lots of investment is going on onto the hyperscaler side. We are going to see the almost more than 100% growth in next 2 years on the megawatt capacity. So we are seeing almost from 45 megawatts to 103 megawatt in next, I would say by 2023. So combination of the things is really putting the India into the central stage. India is becoming kind of the hub, which is connecting well connected from both Europe side or Middle East side on one side, and the other side is on Singapore and Hong Kong side. So lots of content is coming to the India. Usage has increased multiple times. On the access side, I think India is on the verge of launching the 5G. So that's the one testing is already started. Airtel is one of the forefront in that launching the 5G in India, and we already created that network so that we can launch the 5G whenever the spectrums are available. SD-WAN, as Paul talked about, is another area. I think there is a lots of investment is going on, and the customer preference is changing very fast, and SD-WAN is something is picking up very, very well. So overall basis, if you really see, Airtel is being in the forefront on the investment side. We have already committed almost more than $200 million onto the international capacity side. On one side, we are taking the fiber pair from India to Europe. Other side, we are working on the consortiums to create the dedicated fiber between India to Singapore. Domestically, we are investing heavily to reach end customer on the fiber network. So our fiber expansions are on the good spree. Access side, as I mentioned about 5G and the other technologies, where is definitely lots of investment is going on. So this is all around kind of busy month. Technology side, I think we are seeing lots of things are happening. Securities, IoTs, and all other areas where we really see lots of progress is happening.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Praveen. A busy year. You spoke a lot about investment. I'd like to get your perspective, Victor, on the investment as well as other trends. But what are you seeing from the PLDT perspective as the key trends in your investment, and why?
Sure, absolutely. So thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Sam, for the questions. Paul and Praveen, I share a lot of the same sentiments you guys have been seeing a lot of the same things as well. And in terms of technology investments, we've put up about 88 billion pesos in CapEx just for 2021. Now, the trends that we have seen in the past, it's kind of the same thing, but the pandemic just kind of further expedited the need for us to roll out even faster. So general ideas, definitely more fiber footprint nationwide. So we need to get to the provincial areas. We need to power up all the work from home requirements. We have a very large copper to fiber migration program that we've been doing for the past few years, and it should finish up, Q1 of 2022. Further investments into our data center footprint. Right now, we're at about 10 data centers nationwide, and we have about 73,000 square meters worth of data center space. And going to Praveen's point, the hyperscaler market is definitely something that we're actively pushing. So we want to create the Philippines to be a hyperscale destination, a digital hub for Southeast Asia. As you guys know, I think there's like 40 million new internet users within Southeast Asia just this 2021. So it's more hungry data consumption, servicing these digitally native youth populations all over Southeast Asia, especially in the Philippines. I think our population is 111 million with a median age of like 25.8. So our infrastructure, our trends really have to capture that demographic. And fiber, 5G, I think we have about 4,800 5G sites right now nationwide. And then the data center hyperscaler market is what we're trying to focus on. So we will be building the first hyperscale data center in the Philippines. So those are the things that are really.
And let me ask you a follow-up question before I come to Stevie. So how do you make, or what are the ingredients you put in to make the Philippines a hyperscale hub? What is it? I guess there's subsea capacity, there's data center. If you can bring to life what else you need to, put in the mixing bowl.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, we have to focus on our digital infrastructure, which I touched upon. From a domestic perspective, 2 years ago, or less than 2 years ago, we were at about 420,000 kilometers worth of fiber optic footprint cable throughout the country. Now we're at about 600 plus. So it's great to see that kind of progress in a short period of time. So it's the infrastructure, it's the collaboration with the public sector as well. So we're working with the Department of Trade and Industry, as well as other government sectors, the Bureau of Investments, to really get a lot of good incentives. We need their support. We need to make the Philippines a go-to destination. So a lot of campaigns with them to further push our initiatives. And then lastly is to really showcase to the world our population and the propensity for them to use cloud services, the YouTube, Facebook. I mean, Philippines is one of the biggest users of Facebook in the world. I think we're ranked number 6, and we spend a lot of time on social media. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it forces a lot of the hyperscalers to come to the Philippines. So I think those 3 things are some of the focus points to really create us as a destination. And then one last point, sorry. The private and public partnership, and then partnership with our public utility companies, especially the electricity companies. So Meralco is one of the sister companies of the PLDT group. So strong relationship with them to get better pricing.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much, Victor. We're going to talk a lot, I think, about hyperscalers over the next 45 minutes or so. Stephen, let me come to you. Several of your colleagues on the panel have spoken about COVID and the pandemic and the acceleration of demand investment. How do you see this from PCCW Global? Has it accelerated demand on the network, investments brought forward, and to what extent was it a blip? Well, it's a pretty long blip, but a sort of an event as opposed to just a step change that has changed the trajectory and was an inflection point of demand and network requirements.
All right, thanks for the question, Sam. Good day to everyone. I think the outbreak of the pandemic, really is a catalyst to fast track the digital services. Actually, before the pandemic, actually we already see, and other reasons as well. Some related to the trading agreement or disagreement. And some issues relating to politics. So in the couple of 2-3 years, we see there's the market volatility, and there's an obvious shift of expenditure model from capex to opex. And most companies in various industries do not want to tie up their capital in 1 or 2 major projects, but rather reserve more money or more cash flow to pay for the service that they need, and when they need to use them. So because of this, this trend plus the pandemic, so that really gives rise to the very widespread adoption of cloud services, and most industries, most companies in various industries, they all welcome the business model of service on demand and flexibility to upgrade, downgrade capacity that you need, timely provisioning, and most appealing is you only pay for what you use. So therefore, in the market in the past few years, you can see that everybody is into this NaaS, network as a service, and I think whichever companies who has the leading edge to provide end-to-end NAS globally, will be able to succeed.
Let me ask you a question on network as a service, if I may. It's
Yeah.
still quite nascent in the sense that you read different analyst houses. Not all of them have a definition. The ones that do it, it's a different definition. But how pervasive do you think network as a service will become? Is this something that's going to be for specific customer segments, or do you see it, if we go forward 5 years, that is how connectivity will be procured and consumed?
Well, okay. Network as a service is actually is a very broad subject, and you're absolutely right that not everybody has the same definition. So, but for all the the cloud pay as you use kind of model, NAS is the transport layer to facilitate all these features. And if we step back a little bit and think about creating the new industry value, we should not just be confined to our own on-net resources, but to combine network coverage of our partners who are also on board for SDN orchestration. So yeah. when we talk with the different parties, different partners, then the standard or uniformity will start to create, and eventually it will converge. That's how we see it.
Thank you. And maybe, Paul, I could take this question to you. If we can continue to talk about network as a service at the moment. To what extent do you see network as a service from Telstra as, look, it's going to create net new industry value, so it grows the pie and we can all take part, as opposed to this being, it's a new consumption model, therefore this is a market share gain? Net new or market share, where do you see it in Telstra?
A bit more towards the market share side, I think, Sam. I think don't necessarily see it sort of growing the market necessarily, but it definitely super important. As Stephen said, at the transport layer, incredibly important, really important area of differentiation. I think, particularly if you've got the scale, the inventory and the diversity, it is a really important differentiator in the market. So definitely helps you win market share. If anything, there may be some customer segments. Obviously, it's really important, and there's a lot of take up with cloud and content companies, a lot of take up in the financial services industry. At the transport layer, I think certainly at the for more enterprise connectivity, smaller connectivity, perhaps less so. But yeah, not necessarily increasing the market, but really important in terms of competitive differentiation.
And is that, Praveen, would you share that view from Airtel? Do you see this, it's a market share game, and essentially will PLDT, PCCW, Global, Telstra and Airtel be fighting for the same business, or do you think it's an opportunity to grow the pie?
I mean, I agree completely with Paul. I think this is more like a market share, and I think the biggest difference which Airtel brings into the market is that our own infrastructure which we created. So like in India, we have one of the most expanded fiber, more than 200,000 route kilometers of the fiber which we created in India. Almost every data center is connected to our diverse network, multiple fiber pair system. On the international side also, we have our multiple fibers. So going from India to Singapore, I think we have almost 3-4 routes. Similarly, India, Middle East and Europe route, we have almost 5 to 6 routes. So now I think diversity point of view, I take a point from Paul that we have enough diversities available in our own network. And actually, that's become the market share for the other people who don't have that kind of network available into their system. For us also, I think sometimes it's important to use some of the others' network and provide the end-to-end diversity to the customer. And that's what I think we keep continuously working. But more or less, I think this is applicable for the newcomers who don't want to invest into the network. They are just creating the network by taking the lease or taking some portion of the existing service provider network and try to create the layer on that. We are already into that game for quite long, because we are providing the flexibility and all kind of requirement to meeting to all kind of requirements for our customers to ensure they get the the best solutions, best redundancy, as well as the best commercials in their requirements.
Brilliant, thank you, Praveen. I mean, Victor, as you look at this movement towards as a service consumption, how do you see this potentially changing the competitive landscape and also the economics of infrastructure ownership?
Well, to our colleagues' points earlier, I definitely agree with their sentiments. I mean, you said this is very early stage. It's very still raw in terms of how people really categorize NAS. But I think initially the consumption model will change. But as it evolves, new capabilities, will be able to be layered on top of it, such as network services, firewalls, load balancers, API connections, which will ultimately all create a new value. I just think that from our perspective, we're going to do our best to continue pushing, whatever services our clients and our partners ask for. But like you said, it's still early stage, so we shall see.
Yeah, I think the question is, for $1 of investment, do I put it in the ground or do I put it into software? Right, that's the challenge at the moment. Are you finding it's just getting more complex when you're thinking about investment decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very tough to balance, where you put your CapEx, because there's so many areas of the business you want to focus on. But if that's the way of the future, then obviously we're going to have to go in that direction. So
let's move on from as a service in the sense that that's one big change that's coming. I think we'll come back in 12 months' time and either be, look, it's moved forward, or we're still having the same conversation, a bit like we went around with SD-WAN, and now SD-WAN's moving, right? Paul, hyperscalers. So I think this is a big question in the region. It impacts investment. There's a lot of, at least 2 huge cables have been announced this year, Echo and Bifrost coming trans-Pacific into the region. It's changing the customer engagement model. To what extent, and where is the balance between the hyperscalers today, customers, partners, competitors, and how as Telstra International do you maximize your value proposition to that segment?
Yeah, look, I think for us, it's the relationship with the hyperscalers is a lot cleaner and clearer than perhaps what it was 5 to 10 years ago. There are definitely some stakeholders in our organisation that 10 years ago probably saw them as a bit of a bogeyman and, potential competitor in too many areas. I think areas like competing directly in the cloud landscape back when private cloud was, a much more popular with customers than before the massive growth in public cloud over the last few years. I think that sort of go-to-market landscape for enterprise customers has kind of clarified itself. And, we're not, we're resellers of the hyperscale public cloud. So we're close partners with them on that. We're Amazon's #1 reseller in a couple of countries in Asia, as an example. And so that part of the relationship, I think, has made things a little bit clearer. I think for us, they're partners first and foremost, on any given subsea build. And, we've got a huge amount of subsea in Asia or in APAC, obviously. So we might be working with them on the design of a cable. We may be partnering with them on a build and in the joint build agreement. We may be the landing party. We may be the backhaul provider. We may be just providing co-location in a CLS. We may be managing their network. We may be doing all those things before we even get to getting a cable built, and then our core role, which is selling capacity on that cable. So for us, it's such a multi-pronged relationship. We've at any given point in time, we've got so many projects live with the hyperscalers. I think the model, particularly in terms of coming to execute builds for us, is so much easier than what it was 20 years ago. I mean, we're in PLCM, we're in Hong Kong Americas, we're in a ton of the Trans-Pacific and intra-Asia cables in terms of the build work with those at the moment. The experience on those compared to, say, AAG, 20 years ago when there are, 19 parties and you're herding cats and it takes forever to agree to get upgrades done. That old consortium model where there's just too many parties. This is a little bit easier where there's 2 or 3 carriers, there's 1 or 2 hyperscalers, and you can just smash it and get on with it. That, I think, is very, very helpful in terms of, I think they've really helped in a region that has got lots of challenges, particularly from a subsea and domestic backhaul point of view. Yeah. It's been super helpful having them come in and lead a lot of those projects.
Well, thank you, Paul. Stephen, would you share that sentiment of increasingly becoming close partners. And then I'll come back to the COVID situation. At least from the outside, I sensed it strengthened partnerships between the traditional carrier community and the hyperscale community. Is that what you've seen, and what are your hopes going forward?
Well, these hyperscalers, they don't just pop up suddenly. Actually, before we call them hyperscalers, or before they grow to the scale of a hyperscaler, these companies have been, from our perspective, they have been our customers for quite a long time. And when they, back perhaps 5 years, 8 years ago, when they started to offer X as a service to their customers, they needed a flexible and reliable underlying infrastructure that is able to support on-demand services, and with no fixed contractual period. That's quite challenging for us, and on a protected and low latency network to support high-speed application performance. So we talked to most of them and have to arrive at a customized partnership agreement with each of them. So do we compete with them? Not really. I'd say hardly, because all along the relationship is more of a strategic cooperative relationship, because our strengths and focus are quite complementary with each other. But one thing we need to watch out is the hyperscalers, when they need something very quickly. If they need, they may call you up and say, hey, I want 100G. Can you make that ready for service in 2 days' time? So this is something that we have to manage the timely response, and something we have to manage proactively.
Thank you, Stephen. And on that, Praveen, let me ask you, we're talking about as a service models, we're talking about serving hyperscalers. I think Stephen's point there of, RFS in 2 days is a great example of different customer demands. What do you see as the main axes of competition at the moment within this industry? Are you competing on product? Are you competing on customer service at the infrastructure layer? And then how do you see that evolving over the next year or two?
So I think from Airtel point of view, our USP is will be to providing the integrated services. When we say the integrated, I think we are meeting the whole value chain of the hyperscalers or the content providers who come, and most of the hyperscalers are being used by either the cloud player or either the content operator. And what we are actually providing them the end-to-end solutions, including hyperscaler data center, submarine capacities, multiple routes. We are providing domestic access and ensuring that they get the best in class of services. So our attempt is to create, again, I think we talk about the creation of the regional hub. India is well positioned to well connected from both east as well as to the west side, and I think that's where the access, the locations comes into the picture, as well as India's own consumptions also is growing very, very fast. More than 1.35 million populations, and now the consumptions is increasing day by day. On the international capacity, we are almost seeing the doubling of the capacity on every year. And that kind of investment which we bring into the picture, that's where it differentiates to us from any other service provider. India is becoming the hotbed for the hyperscalers. We are, as I mentioned earlier, 450 megawatt to more than 1,000 megawatt in next 2 years. So that kind of expansion which is happening in India. And for Airtel, the important thing, we are investing both onto the hyperscaler as well as on the network side. And then again, the last gradient for any content operator is access to the consumer, where we comes into the very handy, because we own almost 350 million subscribers in India. More than 60% out of this is 4G customers. So for us, I think the major USP is the integrated bag, where not only we provide the infrastructure or end-to-end infrastructure, but also the access to the consumer, so that they can promote, they can have the better quality of the service for their customers.
Thank you, Praveen. So with all of that happening, there's new competitive axes. There is evolved products, evolved consumption models, changing relationships with hyperscalers, COVID driving demand. So I'm now going to use a cliche, Victor. I'm going to ask you about this cliche. we keep hearing it's time for the telco to become a techco. Is that a fair statement? And is it a necessity to become a techco?
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
Sorry. Did you say Victor or Praveen?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, please. Sorry.
Oh, my bad. No, it's funny because going to cliches, I have a cliche line with our sales teams. When we go to talk to our enterprise clients, we essentially say, we can provide you everything except the actual, construction and the furniture that your office or your enterprise company would need. So we really have to do our best and change that misconception that we're just your traditional telco partner, and really diversify the partnerships we have, the products, the solutions. And like you said, with the situation with COVID, a lot of our clients, they're so busy, they're so caught up in budget and spending, and they just want one throat to choke. So what better person to work with than your telco provider for all your ICT solutions, whether it's cybersecurity, data center, you name it, we can offer it. So yes, it's very important that we really, go to that cliche line from telco to techco. We have to be involved with every aspect of their business. Since the internet and connectivity is involved, why not bundle everything on top of it? One throat to choke.
One throat to choke. I think even PCCW Global has been through a transformation, probably the right way to say it, over the past years with the growth of Console Connect and so forth. Could you share your experience of that? Because I speak to a lot of your peers in the industry and they say, tell us more about PCCW Global. They've transformed. So how have you transformed it, and what can you share with us, both the good sides, but also maybe roll up your sleeves and show us some of the scars?
Okay. Actually, we started the journey of a digital transformation back in 2017, and by integrating the Console Connect platform to our global MPLS network. And Console Connect basically is a software-defined interconnection platform that enables the agility of real-time deployment, scaling up and down capacity to cope with varying workloads, and yet retaining the MPLS benefits of security and delivering high-speed performance for your applications. And right now, our Console platform is already connected to all the leading cloud service providers, including AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM, Oracle, Alibaba, Tencent, so that as our customers expand their business globally, they can just choose their desirable cloud services readily. And in addition to cloud services, we've also got different data centers, SaaS providers, internet exchange platforms, IoT providers, all connected. And right now we have around 500 data centers already connected to the platform. And if you are connected to any one of these data centers, or connect to any one of our console nodes, all the applications and services on the platform, you can use those on demand. And as the console community continues to grow, it becomes a meeting place where the connected parties can have mutual business transactions with each other very conveniently. So that's the direction that we are going. We do not really say telco to techco because it's like a transforming from A to B, right? But A is the fundamental infrastructure, which has to be robust, diversified. We still have to maintain that, ensuring very high SLA on a daily basis. So actually, if you ask me, we are telco plus techco. We need to add the agility to respond, to enable our partners to deliver their service to the customer in a very swift manner. But at the same time, we still have to maintain a very robust network to enable a very high SLA. So that's the experience that we had in the past few years.
So telco plus techco. Culturally, how have you transformed the organization to do that, to add the Techco level? What is different in terms of how you need to run the Techco part of the business to the traditional carrier infrastructure business?
Well, we really have to build in flexibility, because nowadays, I'll take a very classic example. To support the multinational customers, to support the hyperscalers, they develop their business on a global basis, but sometimes when they approach a market, and the market is not as what they expected, and they want to change direction, you know, in maybe 2 or 3 months time, then our infrastructure will have to support them in such a flexible way to support the portability. They can switch things from different locations. So flexibility, portability, online support, responsiveness is all the the new culture that we all have to PCSW will have to adapt to.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Stephen. Paul, let me come to you. This question of the infrastructure layer and the technology layer. Obviously, in Telstra, you've taken pretty bold steps in the past 12 months to separate out those parts of the business. Do you see that from an international perspective going forward, it's an infra plus tech model, and do they need to be separate, or can they be run as one organization?
Yeah, look, they're really good questions. I think the way we've approached it, and it may be just because of our scale, both in international and in our business in Australia and our home market, we do believe in keeping them separate, and we've done that. I think a couple of the other building blocks to becoming a Techco that are really important, just big investment in automation, but also the people side. We've invested heavily in our professional services capability, SD-WAN, cybersecurity, cloud. We've kept that as part of a separate team with separate branding. We've done that partly organically, but also with a lot of inorganic acquisition, 9 acquisitions in total to get to 1,500 professional services people. We've kept them branded separately as Telstra Purple, which is, you know, all about purpose and people, hence the name Purple. And look, we think it's important that part of the business has got a slightly separate culture, just slightly more agile, and you know, it's run as a consulting type business. So I think that's really important. And then on the infrastructure side, again, obviously more so in Australia, but increasingly in our international business, the importance of keeping the infrastructure layer a little bit separate. That's probably helps us a bit the way you might structure and finance investments on things like subsea, as well as domestic fibre, as well as towers. We've recently restructured our towers business in Australia and have brought in private investment in that as well. And so we think keeping them separate is the way to go. And it means, to Stephen's point, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can be both telco and techco. I think it's very hard doing that in fully integrated businesses.
Understood. Thank you. And Praveen, would you share that view? I mean, you're a large, very large business. I mean, how are you approaching this?
Yeah, completely agree. I think I take that Stephen's point. I think this is not going to be the completely tech company. It is a combination of the things. Our underlying infrastructure is remain there, where we will keep investing more and more money, because that's something keep providing the customer the right access, the right connectivity. But at the same time, we are working on providing the multiple platform. We launch Airtel IQ platform, which is CPaaS kind of platform, where customer can provide the services to their end users, or create that platform for customer services. We are working creating the platform for IoT. We are working creating the security NOC. So I think the combination of the multiple platforms, which is really taking to the direction of the tech company. But as Paul and Stephen mentioned, I think this is underlying infrastructure is remain the same. We will keep investing there. We will keep finding the ways that how to expand it further. But at the same time, we need to add the flexibilities and the applications to our system so that customer can enjoy the best solutions for their requirements.
Thank you very much. I'm worried that we're entering into the last sort of 5 minutes or so of this session. So I'd like to ask one more question to each of you. So let's put you in front of your CEO and your boards, and they say, right, what is the number one thing that we need to make sure we get right? Yes or yes or yes or yes in 2022 to ensure that we can continue to grow and importantly position ourselves for this very much changing connectivity landscape. So maybe Victor, I can come to you first. What's the number one priority, yes or yes or yes, that you would need to speak to your board CEO about, say we have to get this right in the next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think under-penetrated fiber broadband market would probably be one of the main focus areas for our investments in CapEx. You know, there is you know, that aspect of the population, that content-starved population. So we need to focus on that, make sure we get everybody powered up, continuous focus on the best CX possible. You mentioned, you know, how do we differentiate ourselves from the competition? So it's really coming to the table with the best customer experience possible. And that's the North Star of our company now, is really to focus on that. Back to, you know, our colleagues' points earlier, you mentioned, you know, differentiation between telco and techco. To the board's point, one of the main focus areas is really continuing to diversify the offerings that we have from our techco. So we have ePLDT and we have PLDT. So PLDT is the traditional infrastructure, and then ePLDT would be the digital aspect of things, IoT, cybersecurity, managed IT, cloud, you name it. So yes, back to your the main point of your question. I think CX and then more infrastructure to make the entire nation powered up and connected to our infrastructure. So those would be the things that we would go to the board with.
Fantastic. Let me come next to Stephen.
Okay. Well, my CEO will say, just bring back more healthy margin business for the next year. And so actually, you know, in terms of the subsea infrastructure, we will continue to look at the possibility to invest, to diversify, to build that diversity. The underlying reason is because we need to provide a very high reliability network to support the digital services. We are putting a tremendous effort to amalgamate or to consolidate the meeting place, to facilitate more digital services player to come to the community, so that they you know, to create this this synergy that everybody can leverage each other's strengths and the solutions available to offer services on demand. And so we are now reviewing on a long-term basis. We are actually reviewing and refining the meeting place portal to optimize user experience, and also getting feedback from our partners on a regular basis. So, you know, this is the main direction we're heading.
Brilliant, thank you. Praveen, let me come to you.
I think from Airtel point of view, we are kind of committed very large investment into the infrastructure part. So both on the mobile front as well as to the fiber and the somewhere inside and the data center I spoke about. So I think one area where we will definitely like pushing hard is onto the ease of doing business, creating automations, digitizations, and providing the flexibility to the customer. So that's where I think our main focus will remain, apart from that, whatever we are already committed to do, especially on the infrastructure part.
Brilliant, thank you. And Paul, let me bring the final word to you.
Yeah, look, for us, I mean, our CEO is definitely pushing us for more top line growth. We've done really well with EBITDA the last few years. It's all about growing the business now. And the main focus areas for that are really, firstly, infrastructure. One of the biggest challenges the industry is facing at the moment is a real shortage of capacity, trans-Pacific, particularly US to Asia. We're front and center of that. We're front and center in the reconfigurations that need to be done with Hong Kong Americas and PLCN and all of the challenges and issues with that. So getting those right and getting additional Transpac investment happening, critical. I think domestic connectivity, particularly in terms of backhaul and data center to data center, fiber, another big area of focus for us. Super relate to the journey that Victor talked about earlier in terms of just this amazing change that Philippines happened in the last couple of years. It really is an incredible journey, but it's probably gone through the most change from a domestic fiber point of view of any country in Asia the last few years. And there's several other countries that need to go on that journey quickly, not least of all places like Korea, Taiwan, even my home market, Australia, going through huge domestic fiber investment at the moment, very necessarily so. So those are some key areas. Automation as well, similar to Praveen. You know, we're halfway through a massive automation transformation journey and a big investment there. And then continue to invest in cybersecurity, which is one of our fastest growing areas of the business. We've just done a huge amount of that. The last area is probably IoT. We've done some big IoT projects in region. That's really starting to take off for us as well. We've invested a ton in SD-WAN over the last few years. So not so much in terms of new investment, just more keeping that exponential sort of growth in SD-WAN going. And those are our main priorities, Sam. So.
Brilliant, Paul, thank you. And thank you to everybody. I've left this conversation feeling incredibly confused. Right? It's an industry that we often say has significant challenge, but this is also one with huge opportunity. And it's opportunity in what is being sold, who it's being sold to, how it's being sold, where infrastructure is being deployed, redesigning your organizational DNA. I think, Victor, your point of we can do everything apart from the office, you know, the chairs and the construction. Right? This is a great opportunity for the industry to move forward and achieve growth. And I wish all of you, Praveen, Stephen, Victor, Paul, the best in getting and capturing that growth and net new value for the industry and delivering high quality connectivity to the end users. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to speak with you all. I hope the audience has found this to be an interesting conversation. And David, let me hand back over to you.
Yes, I want to say thank you to Sam for expertly guiding that conversation along, as well to the speakers for your time, your contributions and your analysis there. Very interesting debate, and great to hear aspects such as whether a telco is all to be at a stage where it should become a techco, and all of the infrastructure opportunities and projects that go along in the region as well. So it's very much bodes very optimistic news indeed. I just want to say, take a quick moment to thank all of our sponsors for their support of this year's event, especially to our platinum sponsors, China Telecom, China Mobile International, China Unicom and PLDT, and also to our gold sponsors, Telstra and PCCW Global. Please do take their opportunities to come and see them in their virtual booths during the course of this year's event. This session will be made available on demand for the next 30 days. If you have a colleague who has missed out and would enjoy the session, please let them know. This wraps up day one in this year's conference program. Please check out the agenda page on our Swapcar platform to find out what is coming up tomorrow and on the third and final day of Capacity Asia 2021. Until now, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.